Our speaker tonight is Kojo Baidoo, and he'll be giving his presentation birding during a semester abroad in Panama. Kojo is a 21-year-old birder and wildlife photographer from Baltimore, Maryland. He currently attends Princeton University, where he is pursuing a degree in ecology and evolutionary biology. Although he has always been interested in nature, he became fully immersed in birding in the first grade after reading a book about raptors. He added photography in the 7th grade, finding it an excellent way to communicate the beauty of nature to the public. Kojo truly loves birding and considers it an escape from the stressors of everyday life. Most importantly, he believes that nature deserves to be enjoyed by everyone and emphasizes the importance of carving out a space for yourself if it may not have existed historically. So thank you, Kojo. We're looking forward to your talk.
All right. Hello, everyone. Evening. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I'm going to be just talking to you about my experience studying abroad in Panama. So let's get into it.
Wait a second, make sure I have the right thing up. It might be the power, not the PowerPoint, the photos window. There we go. That should be the, no, wrong. There we go. It's me. It's me that's doing it, Kojo. Try going forward now. Yep. That I've got to share that also. That should be up there.
Okay, so just a little about me. You heard this already, but yeah, I'm 21. I'm a birder, photographer from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm from here, not from Baltimore specifically, but I'm from the northwest near Reisterstown area. Currently, I'm at Princeton, and I'm an ecology and evolutionary biology major. My interests primarily, as you'll learn, fall in behavior and sensory ecology, and pretty much only of birds. I mean, I like other things too.
Not working. There we go.
Okay, so first a little bit about Panama. In Central America, it's formed a land bridge between the American continents. The Isthmus of Panama, it's called, was formed some number of million years ago, and allowed both North and South American species to converge, and also created a natural barrier between the marine species in the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. So there's a lot of really cool species you can find there, and a lot of ones similar to here, as you'll find out pretty soon. There are a number of really cool habitats. I was mostly based just outside Panama City. So here, I'll go over the point because I'm not supposed to use it. Just like right up there, right by the canal, in a town called Gamboa, which is, as you'll see, this is Gamboa. So I arrived at the end of January. And Gamboa is home to the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, which is a branch of the Smithsonian that we have here. And they do a lot of really cool research and have been doing that for a while. And so Princeton partners with them to send a batch of ecology students, juniors, every year, although the program has not been done since the pandemic. So this is the first time in 3 years that it was done. It's supposed to be done last year, but then they canceled at the last second. You have the chance to go to either Panama or Kenya. And usually it's kind of split down the middle. I personally, my family's from Ghana, so I've been to Africa a couple of times and was able to go to South Africa and Mozambique last semester for an internship. So I was kind of like, seen enough of Africa, never possible. But I've never been to the neotropics. I've been very fortunate to travel a lot on Princeton's dime. Well, this was not on Princeton's dime. This was we arrived in Gamboa at this time, and right off the bat, got out of the van and immediately saw a zone-tailed hawk. Here's just a short video of Gamboa. I like to take a lot of panning videos. I don't know if you can hear it. Is this sound? There's a toucan calling in there. Yeah.
I should be playing.
It's not, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's a toucan calling that little croaky call that they do incessantly. They start really early in the morning and just kind of go throughout the day. We'll get into that a little later. But yeah, the downtail was really cool, although kind of gave me a little false perception of what I was going to be saying because I didn't see very many. I only saw I think 2 the rest of the time I was there, but they're around. And I've seen a couple before, but it really cannot be understated how much they are like turkey vultures. Like you see them in the book, and you're like, they're not that. But they do everything the same. It's crazy. They have like little tilty thing. The only thing that's different is they don't really have the silver wing, and you can kind of see it there, like the silver primaries. And sometimes if the light catches them just right, they do have it. But there are some people who don't even think that zone tails are mimics. Although personally I do. Yeah, but it's a kind of interesting thing. But when I saw them, they were almost always with turkey vultures and never saw them really hunt. But I think it is kind of cool how they've kind of honed that adaptation. Yeah, so so the first couple of weeks I just spent trying to learn Panama's overwhelming apifauna with a little bit of success. That's just a trail up there. The Gamboa has a resort. Just some specific background, I should say. Gamboa is a town mostly comprised of either tourists or retired veterans from the U.S. Veterans, there are veterans. Yeah. It was built by U.S. They had control, I guess, of Panama in the 1900s, and so now it's mostly not native Panamanians, but it's also a great tourist destination and has really cool things to see. This is the kind of place that you normally spend like a week at most, and so it was very amazing, but also extremely overwhelming to be there for 3 months. And I don't know the first day that I didn't see a new bird was, which is kind of weird to say. But like after a while, you start getting a little bit of pressure to only see, like to not have a day without seeing it. If that makes sense. Like the first day you go without seeing a new bird, you feel like you failed somehow, which obviously you haven't. It's kind of better if you have. That means you're learning and things. But yeah, I was pretty much on my own. There are a couple other, I guess, sort of birders who were in the program with me, but none of them as dedicated as I am. So I would get up every day and go out and try and see what I could. That's just a crimson collared tanager at the top, blue-ray tanager, and that southern lapwing, which are 3 of the commoner species you can find. Crimson collared, I guess, has I spent the longest time trying to figure out what that was, and I looked at the picture again yesterday and realized it's an apple. So I don't know where I got that. But yes, it's conquered an apple. Right. So one of the other really cool things about Gamboa is that it's right next to one of the best birding destinations in the world, which I did not know before I came. I did not do a lot of research because I find it kind of hard to really get into it when we went to a new spot to consistently research. You kind of have to, it's kind of similar to birding in general. You just have to be there and be in it and hear the birds and then see the birds and know that's what's calling, not the sound, for the most part. But especially here, like, I don't know, I was just I could not find the motivation to really do much learning before I got there. But Pipeline Road is an incredible place to learn. If you look at it on eBird, it has over 400 species, which is insane to me. The Panama Rainforest Discovery Center is a tourist destination that's kind of right off Pipeline Road and pretty much has the same species, but you have to pay to get it. It's like they have it now. But we got a little for a lesser fee because we're students. But one of the really cool attractions they have there is hummingbird setup. So when I got to Panama, I really wanted to see the neotropical hummingbirds because here we have the ruby-throated, which a lot of people here give the ruby-throated black and it's the only one, but I think ruby-throateds are really cool because they're the only ones with the guts that cross the Gulf of Mexico when they migrate, and that's really cool to me. However, at the same time, it really is amazing to be able to go down south or go west and see multiple hummingbird species and go south and see even more. So these are three of the common species. You have the long-billed hermit at the top there, blue-chested hummingbird, on the bottom, the white-necked Jacobin. Inside the white-necked Jacobins at this spot were the dominant birds. I'd say there are maybe 40 of them. And even though size is kind of usually what determines, that's not even true, not for hummingbirds. I was going to say, well, at feeding stations, size for the most part determines like the pecking order, so to speak. But Jacobins were a fair bit smaller than hermits and still kind of dominated them, which is really interesting to see. And yeah, I kind of went back on my statement because now I'm realizing even in the US, the rufous hummingbird is one of the smallest hummingbirds we have and is still somehow the most aggressive. So it really, I would like to know what determines that, but one thing that is really cool about dominance in the species itself. Since I was there to study, there will be a little bit of kind of a academia-esque portion, unfortunately, because I do not like academia, despite what I have shown here. But yeah, so this is kind of a really cool adaptation that people at the Smithsonian actually discovered recently. So you have your adult Jacobin, adult male on the bottom, and then the typical adult females at the very top on the right. And then on the left side, you can see what an immature bird usually looks like. It's kind of a mimic of the adult male, and that's to avoid more aggression at a feeding site. But then I don't know how they figured this out. But, well, I guess they must have found one abandoned and realized it was a female. But yeah, so they found that around 1 in 5 females retain that sort of juvenile plumage. The graphic isn't super accurate. It's more that they look like the juveniles without the mustache. But also the juveniles have a darker band on the tail. The adult males do not have, the tail is fully white, but the juveniles will have like a dark band, and that's how you can tell them apart, as well as the mustache. The females that are mimics, so to speak, don't have that mustache, but retain the darker band. So they are still able to be told apart, but they look for the most part like adult males. And we think that this is, I don't think, they think, sorry, that this allows them to suffer less aggression, not just from males, but from other birds in general. But at the same time, it's not a reliable indicator of aggression, if that makes sense. So if they get actually challenged, they won't always win because they're still typically smaller than adult males and not as aggressive, but it allows them to kind of cheat, so to speak. So it's funny, in ecology and evolutionary biology, it's one major, but you kind of find that people gravitate more towards the ecology side and the evolutionary biology. I hate evolution. I hate it so I somehow found myself wondering how this mimicry first evolved. And it makes me wonder if feeders could play a role, because Jacobins are not, like a lot of hummingbirds, they aren't naturally attracted to feeding sources en masse, so to speak. They would rather feed like solitarily, but the prevalence of hummingbird feeders in the last couple of decades, since like maybe the 50s, has really shifted a lot of hummingbirds' behavior up here. If you go out west, you can see that like literally dozens of hummingbirds will be flying around several feeders. For some reason, ruby throaters don't do that, but a lot of the birds out west will, and it's the same for the ones down south. So feeders, this really consistent food source kind of leads them all together, and that has led to a couple interesting adaptations already. I think in the West, Anna's hummingbirds have developed, I think it's longer bills, something with their bills. I can't remember right now, but some kind of bill adaptation that coincides with the prevalence of feeders. And I'm wondering, I hope someone figures it out because it's not going to be me, if the mimicry has become more prevalent as they become more in contact with one another in terms of food sources. So that could be kind of something interesting, cool to figure out. But yeah, okay, here's something I hope plays. No, it's not going to. Possibly get it. Did you press it? Is that first?
Take off the pointer.
If not, I think it plays. Oh,
I don't know why it's not playing.
Uh-oh. Oh, now I'm back. So here, I'll just play it off my phone for you really quickly because it's a really cool sound. Oh, let me put it in the microphone.
Use both microphones.
You know what? I'll be even better. I have my computer Sorry for this.
I don't understand why it's not playing.
No worries at all. It wouldn't matter for literally anything else but this. This is really cool. But it's about birds, I promise. Here. Let me see. Here it is. Here it is. Can you hear that? I don't know what's close. Oh, my God.
Use this way.
Ooh. All right, let me do it one more time. Yeah, so that one day we were just the resort has a series of trails, and one day really early on we were just exploring still. I was with a couple other people. I think we were looking for a tree, a very specific kind of tree that has it doesn't matter. Yeah. So on our way to look for the tree, we did not find a tree, spoiler alert, but we heard this sound. And at first we thought they were insects, but then I'm not sure if you could hear it, but there's kind of vocalization that goes on with it, like a little, then they do it. And so we went down this trail and we found these guys. These are golden colored mannequins, which are the coolest birds on the planet. Yeah, so if you know the family of mannequins, you've probably seen the National Geographic video here or there or something like that. So it's a family of about 60-ish neotropical songbirds, and each of them has very specific.
There you go. Fresh batteries on that one.
Wonderful, thank you. Oh, okay, so yeah. Each one has a very specific courtship display that it does specifically. The males do them in leks, which means that they a lot of males will visit that particular spot and all compete for females that one spot. And the females are very choosy. And so the human eye, every single male's display looks the same, pretty much. But they have, well, this is what people have been trying to figure out. What exactly do the females look for, and how do they distinguish these minute differences between each male, and how does that tell them which male is best to sire their children? I personally don't know, but it's so I found them, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what they do. So this is their courtship behavior. They perform from January to August, so they had just started when I got there, which is really fun for me. Males perform these displays in their adjacent territories or courts. Their court is up there at the top left. It's an area on the forest floor that they clear of leaf litter, and there are a couple of saplings around it, and they just kind of bounce from sapling to sapling. There's a video that'll pop up in a second. And I will, yeah, okay, yeah. But yeah, the top right is one of the mechanisms they do. So mannequins are really physiologically specialized, and what these ones in particular do is they create specific snapping and roll snapping or other sounds by slapping their wings across their head really, really fast. And it's so fast that it actually makes them one of the most specialized animals in the world. Males, I think, when they roll snap, their heart speed at up to 1,300 beats per minute, which is the most recorded in any vertebrate, which is absolutely insane. So I was just overjoyed. I knew these guys were around. I have a friend there who really wanted to study them, but we didn't really know where. Like I said, I didn't do any research, so I just kind of stumbled upon them. And it turns out this has been a lek that's been active for years, and all the guys take their high-paying customers there and everything. And so it was cool, kind of to discover it on our not on our own, but like. So here's a video of it. This is a video. I'm gonna try and hopefully, even though the sound isn't working, I'll just put my mic up to it and play it because you can kind of hear the snaps and everything. So this is going to be a male and a female, and she kind of lets him do the same thing.
Success. 2 seconds in paradise.
So that's it. It's really cool. They do that all day. But the funny part is the females, you can see they're green. Here I have a cute little yeah. This is like this is not mine, but it's really funny. Yeah, they're green and very nondescript. As is often the case with birds that have really elaborate courtship displays, males don't help at all with rearing young. They just put a lot of effort into courtship and then that's it. Although they do it for 8 months, which is again crazy to me. But yeah, so they kind of start early in the morning and they'll start roll snapping and zapping and doing whatever. And then a female will eventually come in, and I only saw, I think, 4 females the entire time I was there. And that wasn't to say they weren't around. They're just extreme. They don't really vocalize at all. They're very quiet. But I knew one was around when all the males started getting like really jazzed up and like jumping like around the thing. And like there were probably 12 males at this one leg, and they were just all around. It was incredible. So I went there probably every day for maybe 2 weeks, and that's mostly because I did my first field project on it. So we had, for each course, we had an independent project that we would do kind of to simulate. We each have senior theses that we have to complete, which is a longer project that we'll be doing mostly this summer, and then be summarizing throughout our senior year. And so the study abroad program kind of helps you to start thinking independently and being able to summarize your data and present it. And so you got to make up whatever you do as long as it works. And so I figured, why not use this to look at the mannequins for hours on end? Because of course. So what I did was I analyzed that roll snap, which is like the buzz you heard before the actual snaps. Because a lot of people have done, okay, this is how academia works. You find a tiny little gap in the knowledge, is what they like to call it, and you add your own little spin to it. But the thing about it, for me, where I get disillusioned with it is that sometimes the gap either is really obvious or isn't really that consequential in the long run. But for me, again, I'm here to look at birds. So I decided to figure out if the mannequins responded to each other's roll snaps. So often in a period of silence, which I determined, I started that with like 2 minutes and realized that didn't work. So I did 15 seconds without any kind of snap or roll snap, was determined to be a period of silence. So I determined if after that period, the first male to roll snap was followed by a different male. So in the recording, you heard a buzz and another buzz. And it's kind of obvious that they probably do because they're all competing. You know, I decided to record them. That's web app, not web app, a computer app called Audacity, where you can, that's a spectrogram. So if you use eBird, you probably know the spectrograms. That's a kind of cool one, but that's what the roll snaps look like. And then those little like wavy things, there are a couple of them in there. That's the vocalizations. And so I would record like the first roll snap and the second one, and then just figure out the time lag between them. And then the idea was that a specific amount of time between snaps was supposed to indicate a response. Now, what is that amount of time? Pretty arbitrary, and really, I didn't have an answer. I think I just said yeah, if you can see the graph there, sorry to get very, I hope this isn't too sciencey, but you can see like the peak shows that most of the roll snaps occurred at just under a minute after the first one. So hopefully that kind of says that they do respond, but it is kind of interesting because people don't really know what the roll snaps function is. And I was hypothesizing that since it preceded the jump snap dance, like the little thing where that actually gets the female in the court and allows him to mate with her, that's kind of to get her attention. And that's why it's very important for birds to respond, because if the first male sees a female and then does the roll snap, other birds have to also kind of clamor for her attention too. That's what I'm thinking happened. I have no way of knowing if this is really the case because females were so elusive. But yeah, to summarize, I think golden collar mannequins are pretty cool, but these are myself. This bird, I think I named him Snappy. His neighbor was Clappy. There was Flappy, Happy, and I don't know. I named them all. There she is. But yeah, they were pretty tame. Probably because they were all juiced up on testosterone and really wanting to mate with female. But if you kind of just sat down like not a couple feet, maybe 10 feet from their court and like waited for them to come in, they'd come and they do a little it's kind of like a phantom clap. It's like a little I don't even know how to describe it, but like they do it as they get excited and they go down and they like just go crazy. And but yes, this was probably my favorite bird from I can't say that actually. I can never say it. If you, this is not a plug at all. But I have an Instagram account. If you follow me there, you may know that literally every single post I say this bird is my favorite in some way, and that's just because whenever I get a good photo of something, it's because I've done a good look at it for a long time, and it's showing me some behavior that's always really cool. I just can't help but make it my favorite. So I literally, yeah. But this, if I had to pick, okay. So, one thing that's really cool about Panama is, and just the neotropics in general, is that there are a lot of birds that we get up here that we're wintering down there. So here we have a yellow warbler, bay-breasted warbler, least sandpiper, a broadwing hawk, and a peregrine falcon. Spoiler alert: only 2 of those pictures were taken in Panama, the least sandpiper and peregrine falcon. But the yellow and bay-breasted and broadwing in particular were pretty common wintering species there, which is really cool to see because they leave in the fall and you spend all winter waiting for them to come back. But I kind of just follow them down there and then we brought them back up here to catch them in time. So that was always really cool to see. Yeah, but then in addition, there are a lot of other native birds that I encountered. So up on the top left is a red-capped manakin, which is also in the manakin family. They also they have their own cool thing that they do. In fact, they're probably more well known than the golden collars, because if you ever looked up like moonwalking bird on YouTube or something, that's the same species. I have never seen them do it. Had never seen them do it. But yeah, was not able to watch them do it. So I do not think that they're as cool, but they were, I don't know, they were, and that bird was kind of interesting because that was seen at the golden collar lek, and I'd seen him there kind of not super consistently, but like enough that it was a little peculiar that I don't know if he was scoping on his competition. It was cool. In the middle, there's a spotted antbird, and there's a slaty-tailed trogon. The spool-billed ani is on the left there, which is a really cool species that actually makes it up to Florida. And then there's a greater ani, which is a Central American species that is interesting primarily because it's breeds colonially, sort of. Not even colonially, cooperatively is the word. So 2 or 3 pairs will build a nest, and then they'll all lay their eggs in the same nest and rear the young together indiscriminately. And my thesis advisor actually studies them. Funny enough, she did not respond to my emails about senior theses for 2 months because she was down in Panama studying anis and not checking her email. But I'm not bitter, I'm not. It was really cool because I took her class last year and she lectured about them, and so it was cool to actually, I didn't see them breeding. I did see a nest, but yeah, they're really interesting, especially because the females have this really weird competition thing where they all have to sync up their egg laying, but the first egg to be laid always gets removed. So I don't remember how they ever figure out. Oh yeah, the first egg always gets removed by another female until she lays an egg, if that makes sense. So they all have to keep laying eggs and they keep getting removed until all of them have laid, and then they finally will lay and no one else removes it. And then there's also a lot of weird like mafia stuff where other pairs will go, and I think they found that they don't have that many predators. They have some predators, but they found that like a lot of nests are being destroyed really weirdly. And another thesis student, I think she put out fake nests and put cameras on them, and then she found that over 90% of the nest failures or destructions were from neighboring ani groups who would come and destroy the nest, which is so crazy to me. I don't know. They do look a little sinister, so I guess it makes sense. And finally, there's a whooping motmot, which was a pretty wonderful and common species. Motmots are related to trogons. Kind of a little bit, kind of got the whole right long tail thing going on there, but they're really cool because I kind of assumed they'd be very very conspicuous. If you look at the other birds in the same taxonomical order, you have like kingfishers and woodpeckers and bee eaters and rollers, and all of those are very prominent birds who will like sit out and display their plumage and say, "Look at me." And motmots do not do that at all. Even though they look pretty bright, they're very unobtrusive. All their calls are like, it's a whooping mama, but it's a very, very muffled whoop. And they kind of just sit in the like pretty close to the ground and just sit still. And a lot of the time, I'd only notice them once I walked right past them, like they'd let me approach like there, and then they'd flush. That's what happened with that bird. But then didn't go far, and allowed me to get a really nice picture. But yeah, I think some more neighbors, yeah. So we have great kiskadee, clay-colored thrush, both of which make it up to Texas. I think great kiskadees are native in Texas. Clay-colored thrushes are more vagrants. Another mama because why not? But then, if you like snakes, I mean, sorry, if you don't like snakes, please look away now. Yeah, so unfortunate green vine snake and crimson collar tanager, and this is really interesting because I remember seeing this happen. Oh, okay, I didn't see the actual predation happen, but I remember crimson colored tanagers kind of travel in groups of 4 or 5 birds. And I was walking to I think the mannequin spot one day, and I heard them all going crazy. I was like, "What's going on?" And I saw this bird, and you can't see them in the photo, but the trees, the tree it's in has vines and not vines, sorry, spikes like thorns. And I thought somehow it had gotten impaled. And so I thought something just impaled it on there, like killed it and impaled it later, like shrikes do. But there are no shrikes here, or no no birds in the shrike family anyway. So I had no idea, but I just snapped a photo and left. And then I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, I finally got the photo off my SD card. I looked a little closer, and there's a freaking snake. And it just and I killed it. And it makes so much more sense. And I think you can actually see like a couple lacerations on the snake from either the bird or the birds that were mobbing it, because it wasn't just the tanagers, it was a lot of birds were. So I'm kind of embarrassed for myself for not realizing that obviously something was still, but it also speaks to the really cool camouflage of the snake that I was able to do that. So sorry if you don't want to see any dead birds today, but it is really cool natural history. So that's it. So next, we went to Barrow, Colorado Island, which probably isn't super well known here, but in Central America and in the academia world, which is super small, but is still well known within academia. It's pretty famous. It's an island in Lake Gatun, which is a lake kind of connects to the canal, and it's just outside of Gamboa. So it's where the Smithsonian does a lot of research, and it's special because it's a very closed system with very little human influence, and so it's like very old growth forest that has not been touched almost at all. I think that their settlement, but that's the Smithsonian's base of operations. Besides that, completely untouched. And so this bird is called the crested guan. It's a very cool prehistoric looking game bird. And on the Panamanian mainland, it's almost extinct. So they have been, like a lot of game birds, have been wiped out by humans. And the only ones that are left are in protected areas. And the ones that aren't in protected areas are extremely elusive and hardly ever seen or whatever. And so I didn't really know that. I mean, I knew that this was my best chance to see the crested guan, but I didn't really know that on the island, because they are not persecuted, they are super, super tame. So eventually we found a couple, and they were just sitting there eating something, berries or something, and they kind of just like, you can't see it because it literally came too close for my brain, but it's a big bird too. So they kind of just walked down the little line, and they just hung out right next to us for forever. And I remember, I think the presenter before me was talking about how middle school children are super loud. Unfortunately, they do not get quieter with age. So a lot of my peers were just super loud, and it was crazy because even as ecology students, like, you have to be quiet to see things. So you would think that they wouldn't be loud. No, they would be loud. So like they were talking. I was just like, please. This was like an overarching thing. I was like, guys, please, just. But it turns out it didn't even matter at all. Like the birds were not there. So yeah, that was a really, really cool experience. Seeing them there. All right, so we're gonna do some really cool army ant stuff. So this is, luckily you don't need sound for this video. So this is an army ant swarm. Army ants are a really cool feature of the neotropics because they conduct raids on the forest floor. They're nomadic, and so they set up these camps with their larvae, and then they'll go conduct raids and chase down invertebrates in the forest floor and bring them back while other ones continue raiding. And that results in this kind of mass exodus of invertebrates, of like arthropods and all sorts of insects and things. And it's attended by a lot of bird species, primarily ant birds. So usually it's considered commensalism because you would think that the army ants don't, what's the word? They're chasing them, but they don't lose out. Well, the birds win because they can take easy prey. But really it's called parasitism because they're technically stealing prey from the army ants, and a couple of studies have found that the capture rate of the ants is decreases heavily when there are ant birds present, which is kind of cool. So this is a spotted ant bird on the left and a bicolored ant bird on the right, and they're in the same family, but they're pretty different. Oh, yeah, okay, here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this first. So there are three birds here. There's a black-crowned antshrike on the top, a bicolored ant bird also on the top, sorry. And so the one on the left is what's called a facultative ant forager. The one on the right is an obligate ant forager. And what that means is that bicolored ant bird, the one up there, has to get pretty much all of its food from following army ants. Which has always been kind of confusing to me because in theory, it should just be able to flip over a leaf and find something, right? But no, they will seek out ants and follow them despite territorial boundaries, follow them for weeks as they kind of go from camp to camp and do their raiding thing. Meanwhile, the black-crowned antshrike is more of a kind of a typical forager, like it has its own territory, it stays within its territory. If an ant swarm passes through its territory, it may or may not forage, along with the typical obligate ant birds. And so the problem is that people don't really know how to distinguish between facultative and obligate. I think really old studies kind of said that obligate get more than 50% of their food from ant swarms and facultative just do whatever. That's kind of hard to quantify. Then there's the fact that obligate will go across territories, facultative don't. Sometimes facultative do. And then there's also the fact that there's a strategy called bivouac checking. The bivouac is that temporary camp that the ant colony will make. Obligate species will check the last location of that camp and kind of go to each last location to figure out where the ant swarm is, and where they may be going next, while facultatives don't do that. So there are kind of a lot of factors that go into it. But one thing that all ant followers do is eavesdrop. And so what they'll do is, especially the obligate foragers will sing as songbirds do. And you'll find that a lot of both other obligate and facultative species will kind of be zeroed into that song, and they'll use it to find an ant swarm. So I decided to do my second project on birds, even though, funnily enough, it was a parasitism course. And there aren't that many parasitic, there are brood parasites, but there weren't many, there were a couple cowbirds, but not enough to do a whole project on. So I was like, how can I spin this my way to look at birds for 3 more weeks? And it took a long time because I realized quickly there's just a parasitism, and it worked out. I don't know what my grade is actually, but yeah. Hopefully it's a good one. The unfortunate thing is I didn't really get that much data. These are a couple playback species I had. There's a control that wasn't an ant follower, chestnut-backed ant bird, which only rarely follows a spotted ant bird, which is usually a facultative follower, and then 2 obligate species. You can see that technically the obligate species got a lot more response, but that's literally, I think it was like maybe 8 species. No, I mean you can count the number of species, but like less than 15 species and like less than 10 individuals. It was a bit, and this was over several days of just playback experience. And it was not a very great experimental design, but again, it was kind of just a way for me to go to a cool place. I was at Pipeline Road, which was really fun because I could just bird pipeline while doing a field project and seabirds. So I mean, there were results. I mean, it was kind of interesting. But yeah, in conclusion, who knows which birds they prefer? Certainly not me. But that's kind of fun because that bird up there, that's the spotted ant bird again. And I said it's mostly a facultative follower, but it can actually kind of switch its strategy depending on where it is. So on Barrow, Colorado, the island that I was talking about, one of the species of obligate ant birds, an ocellated ant bird, which is the biggest, most dominant one, went locally extinct in 1970s just because of, I think, lack of habitat. Which is really interesting because it really wasn't due to human manipulation. I think it was just a natural extinction. But either way, bicolored and spotted ant birds also occur there. And spotteds were mostly facultative, pretty much all facultative. But then when ocellateds left, they were able to switch to obligate because they were no longer competitively excluded from ant swarms because they're a lot smaller than the ocellateds. So ocellateds will often chase them out and do all this, like a lot of stuff. And so they're on the periphery, on the edge of the ant swarm a lot of the time. But with the extinction of the ocellateds, they were able to kind of switch over and start leaving their territories like the bicoloreds do and follow ant swarms for weeks. While on the mainland, you'll see that they kind of will stay in the same territory like normal facultative followers do. So that's a really kind of interesting thing. And it's just that the lines between the two are a lot really blurred. It's a very, very large spectrum that depends not only on where you are, but I don't know, a lot of other factors that I certainly don't know, but still cool to watch birds some more. Yeah, all right. This, I think, just a little bit of birding pipeline road. This, yeah, it doesn't need to be played, but it's howler monkeys. Actually, I think I will play it because howler monkeys are not birds, but they are very prominent.
Fun to listen to.
Yes, that's for sure. No, that's the wrong one. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of just a little taste of what pipelines sound like in the morning. I had never been in the morning before this point, but I think at this was the point where two new TAs showed up. The new for every new course we had new TAs who were grad students who would show up, and the TAs for this course were Alex Levy, who some of you may recognize his name. He was in YMOS as a young birder, kind of was a trailblazer at that, and went to Cornell for undergrad and now at Princeton, which is crazy. But he's an incredible birder. He does a lot of research in Brazil, and I think has been to Costa Rica a couple of times. But either way, he knows his neotropical birds, and it's crazy when he got to Panama. The number of species I personally saw shot up because he knew all the sounds. In the neotropics, pretty much. I'd say a strong 75% of the forest species have the same kind of like baseline call, which is some kind of trill that goes up or down and like either ascends at the end or descends at the end. And they're all very hard to tell apart. But somehow day one, he was out, he knew this, he knew that, and it was kind of insane. But I learned so much from him as well as from Pipeline. So it was really cool to go in the morning, even though it's super overwhelming. If you have someone with you who knows, I have mixed feelings on guides as a whole because I want to know what I'm seeing, but the whole point is to learn, and the only way you can learn, besides running around blind for however many days or weeks, like I was doing before, is to have someone who knows the birds already, and he definitely helped me a lot. So thank you to him. So here's a couple of the species I saw while I was both just birding in general on my own or doing my field project. At the very top there is a great jacamar, which is a really cool species, I think, possibly related to that same group of trogons and kingfishers and everything. Then there's a great potu, which is kind of similar to nightjars. They are nocturnal, and during the day they hide in plain sight, like that one is doing on a branch. It was kind of cool. I'd go by that spot almost every day, and sometimes it'd be there and sometimes it wasn't. So it's kind of cool. I know it must obviously have other spots where it hides out, but I wonder what influences that decision. And then at the top there's a streak-chested ant pitta, which is kind of a misnomer of a name. Ant pittas, as you might be able to tell, also do follow army ants, but some of them don't. Actually, a lot of them don't. Same as ant birds. Actually, a lot of them don't really follow them all that often. Obligate species make up a very small number. For some reason, but I don't know, they still call them ant birds, and that's one of them. So then there's a great tinamou, which is a wonderful game bird that, not unlike the crested guan, is not as common in most areas of Panama because it's been hunted. But in Pipeline, they were pretty common and also very unafraid. Like I kind of expected them to be very retiring, but there were a couple spots where they kind of just walk out on the road in front of you and just forage and even approach you a little bit, which is really fun. At the bottom there's another motmot, rufous motmot, which is the largest species of motmot it had, and then a black-footed trogon on the right there. So I think that picture was taken on my birthday, actually. She's fine. Yes, very nice birthday present. Yeah. Right. Now we have birding in the highlands. And I honestly did not realize how many sound features I had until but this is also very necessary. So after the third course, we went to this island called Coiba off the coast of Panama. It's the largest island in Central America, and it's very important because it is, again, virtually untouched by humans. It used to be, unfortunately, a penal colony for the Spanish to imprison native peoples, but because of that, there were not many people on the island at all, and they did not want to mess with the wildlife because there are a lot of crocodiles and a huge number of venomous snakes and all sorts of things. But now it's a national park, and it has a little bit of tourism, but I don't know if this is still the case, but at one point, I think fewer than 60 people were allowed on the island at one time. It's not like a small island. Again, it's the largest in Central America, but it's actually absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, there are not many birds there. There's one endemic species that I was able to see, was unable to photograph. So I have nothing from Koiba, but I said all that to say, in between traveling from Koiba and the next spot, we spent a day in the highlands, which was really exciting for me because the Central American highlands are kind of what a lot of people picture when you think Central American avifauna. I'll show you that in a second. I kind of didn't realize that before I came. Not that the lowland rainforest wasn't incredible, but at the same time, just a lot of the iconic species that you might have seen on eBird or wherever are mainly found in the highlands, and you can only really find them in Panama, in the east part of the country, where we were not going to be spending any time until my third professor was like, yeah, why don't we just spend a day in the highlands and stay in like a really cool resort. Again, this part, well, I say on Princeton's time, but it was all included in tuition. So anyway, so this is just a video of one of the really cool species there, one of the prettiest bird songs ever, the black-faced solitaire. But yeah, I wasn't sure if you were able to hear, but that's that really pretty whistle on the back, and it's ethereal and beautiful and everything wonderful. So yeah, there were some really cool species in the islands, including the resplendent quetzal, which I was super stoked to see. Obviously, it's funny, before I saw it, I didn't realize how much I'd wanted to see one. Panama is not really the best known place for them because the highlands are really not that much of the country. If you see them, you definitely go to, I think, or Guatemala and Costa Rica. Is where they're generally seen. But what I didn't realize is that they're actually somewhat common in the places that they're found. At least they are definitely decreasing a lot because of habitat loss. And I realized that when we went to the cloud forest, a lot of it's being converted to farmland and things. But we got out of the car at this spot and immediately heard and saw 5 of them in a tree. It was actually incredible. So this was absolutely highlight, and I can still dream about the highlands. We were only able to spend a day there, but another really cool function of the highlands was seeing island hummers. So there were a couple hummers that I knew before, like the white-necked Jacobin, I knew about and really wanted to see, but I didn't realize a lot of the ones I had heard of before, like the Talamanca hummingbird at the top right, and then the lesser violet ear, were only found in the highlands. So I really didn't know I was going to be able to see them. And once you step out, like I stepped out of the car and it's, instead of being 90 degrees, it's 75 and chilly and there are clouds. And it was a dry season when we were there forever. So it was pretty much, there was no rain on most days, but then you go up to the cloud forest and it's raining. Not all the time, but it's like always threatening to rain, but it's oh my gosh, I miss it so much. But yeah, these are just a couple of the hummers we saw. One thing that's cool, this scintillant hummingbird on the left, you might notice it looks a little familiar, and that's because it's in the same genus as the Selasphorus hummingbirds of the West, like the Rufus and Allen's hummingbirds, broad-tailed, and it actually has that same little wing buzz that they have. If you've ever seen a male of the species, you know they have a certain feather that makes their wing beats visible, so it's kind of like a little cricket noise, like a as they fly. And then I unfortunately don't have any audio of that one, but it is really cool to hear. It's a very metallic, cool sound. And then the Talamanca again was really, really cool to see. That's kind of like a dream photo almost. It's like the gorgets and hummingbirds. If you've ever photographed hummingbirds, you know getting the full gorget is very difficult because you can only kind of get it almost at a head-on angle, which is not the angle you want for photography. You kind of want like a side profile thing. So you kind of either have to sacrifice getting that side profile or getting the gorget. But sometimes they do a little wing stretch and you kind of get both. So that was really, really wonderful and very very nice of him to do for me. Yeah. All right. So then we moved on to Bocas del Toro, which is in the Caribbean, on the Caribbean side. This is the first time we'd ever been to the Caribbean side. And a lot of the birds were different. There weren't that many of them. We were, for reference, this was a coral reef course, so I was not doing a lot of birding. It was more looking for fish and sea turtles and sharks, which was also incredible. It kind of did not feel like a class at all, but it was really cool. Some of the birds that we saw were boat-billed heron, shining wood honey creeper, which I don't have any photos of them, but there are red-legged and green honey creepers pretty much all over Panama. And shining is kind of the one that looks like them, but it's slightly different. They have, again, red leg obviously has red legs. Green looks nothing like the other two, but shining is the one that you have to, it's a lot more uncommon, and you have to get a good look at the legs to see it. And I heard they make tiny little chit noises, and I heard one. And my friend, who is more into the academia side of like the ornithology kind of things, but is still kind of a casual birder, said he'd seen one and had a picture to prove it. So I was like, okay, all right, I had to see one. So I heard it and I was like, might as well. And it turns out they were there, so that was fun. And then the northern Lasana, which is a really cool bird because it displays sex reversed roles in breeding. So this is a female, and in most birds, males do a lot of the courtship and either less or very little of the parental duties, but in Jasanas, it's the other way around. So even though females lay the eggs, they are the ones who fight for males. They're larger, they hold territories, and they have multiple partners. So what they'll do is they'll court a male, and then they will lay eggs in his nest and then just leave. And he will do all the work. And then she'll just, yeah, it's really cool. It happens in a fair number of shorebirds. Spotted sandpiper is actually one up here that it happens with, but Jasanas are kind of the coolest example. And then obviously those really cool long feet are really incredible to see. So yeah. Okay, and then for the last leg, we were back in Gamboa, and this kind of started happening a bit earlier before I left. But one really cool feature of Central America is it's where all the raptors that migrate go to spend the winter. So we saw broadwings pretty much the entire time we were there. The turkey vultures are native to Panama and breed in Panama, but they also winter there. So there's kind of an influx of wintering birds, and swings and tops as well. So there's actually one swings and top up in there, which is cool because I absolutely love swings and tops so much. I've only been to the West a couple times, but again, I have several favorite birds, but if I had to really pick one, that would be one of them. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so it was really spoiler alert that actually that photo on the left was not taken and sorry, it was taken at Cromwell Valley Park actually, but it was kind of what we saw. So one thing that's cool is when they're migrating up here, when they're going down south, they are somewhat concentrated, but not super concentrated. And obviously, as they go farther down, they get to Texas, and they're in the tens of thousands. They get down to Mexico and Panama, they're in the hundreds of thousands. And then they go off to wherever they spend the winter. Then when they come back, it's like the opposite. So down here, they're in the, I wouldn't say hundreds of thousands, but like numbering in the thousands, and then they go back up and kind of spread out as they go back up north. And I've always found it really interesting because it's I don't know if there's any scientific basis for this, but I have heard from hawk watchers that the cool thing about this group migration is that it more happens because they all find themselves in the same place at the same time. Like, in September, it's always that one big broadwing day where the conditions are always right. And it's not like all the broadwings get together and it's like, hey, let's all go down now. It's more like they're like independently think, hey, this is a really good time to go, and we're all going to go. But they all happen to get on the same thermals at the same time and just jet. When you see them sitting perched, waiting for the day, they don't really act socially with one another. They're more just happening to be in the same general route as they get down there. That's kind of really interesting to me. I think the same goes for the turkey vultures and swainsons hawks. Actually, swainsons I think might display a little bit more social behavior, but broadwings for the most part don't really tend to interact all that much. But then there was a really cool experience where we got back from a trip one day, and this is going to be a horrible video. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of it because my SD card has had to malfunction, and I got most of the good pictures off, but some of the more like memory pictures instead of like good pictures that are all gone, unfortunately. But I still have videos because I'm a serial recorder. So this is a river of raptors. And those are Mississippi kites, actually. So yeah, this is something I was not expecting at all. So the place where we were staying, the schoolhouse, is extremely cold for some reason. And, hilariously enough, the temperature is actually controlled at the Smithsonian Building in DC. And for some reason, if you have to change the temperature at all, you have to call them. And it takes forever. And we didn't know this until the last week we were there, and I was like, are you serious? Like, are you? But so sometimes I just go outside to get warm because it's 90 degrees outside, but 60 inside the schoolhouse. So I was outside, and I don't go anywhere without my camera because that's rule number one. And so actually, no, I didn't have my camera. I had my binoculars. I didn't have my camera. No, I didn't have my binoculars either, actually. Sorry, that's crazy. And they were right there, but I just gone out to get warm for a little bit. So, and I looked up, and it was 3 o'clock. So any migrating raptors were way high, but I moved a little closer, and I'll play it again. Oh no. I freaked out. I absolutely freaked out. Every time I see, even when I'm watching Broadwings up here and I realize it's a huge group, I freak out because I'm like, how about this? And I don't know if I ever did count it. But yeah, so I ran in, I got my stuff, I got my other 2 birder friends. I know they want to see this. And I only saw them in Mississippi kites when I took the picture. And it's cool because each species has its own migratory window. So down here, up here, I guess the Broadwings go, well, yeah, I'll say up here meaning the US. And Mississippi kites go down first, followed by Broadwings, followed by Swainsons, followed by turkey vultures. And it's kind of the opposite when they go back up. Turkey vultures start going first, followed by Swainsons, followed by Broadwings, followed by Mississippi kites. And they all do overlap a little bit. Like in this river, there were a few Broadwings, I think, in there, and a few vultures, I don't know if I saw Swainsons because they were all mostly gone at this point. But for the most part, by that point, that was the beginning of April, it was only Mississippi kites going up. And this was like I think the largest kettle I saw. But at several points throughout the next couple of weeks, I'd just be looking up and straining my eyes, and all of a sudden it'd just be like hundreds of them just jetting north. And I don't know, it was absolutely insane. And it's funny that I kind of joked about leapfrogging some of the species a little bit. Like I followed them down there, and then now they're leaving to go back up north. And yeah, even though I left exactly 3 months after I came, so end of April, I was still seeing some species as they were being seen for the first time up here, which was really kind of weird to me. Like northern water thrush was a really common wintering bird, and of course by April 28th, they're pretty much up here. But at the same time, I was still seeing them down there, yellow warbler and a spattering of warblers, and not even young females, which are usually the last birds to come through because they aren't breeding or anything. It was like adult mammals that were down there. So I don't know what was up with that. But I don't know. It is kind of cool that migration kind of never really ends, if that makes sense. Like you think it's over by June. I guess maybe there are 3 weeks in June and July where nothing is moving per se, but then by July the shorebirds are back and then the warblers are back, and it kind of never ends for them. So it's so interesting. And on that tune, here are a couple of familiar faces I saw down there. Again, spoiler alert, none of these photos were taken down there. These were all taken in Maryland, but not in Panama. It was quite difficult to get good looks at songbirds down there because it's super, super dense. But yeah, so this is just a couple of species. I put trails. That bird up there is a willow, but I did see one trail. And I was trying to get it to call, and it simply would not. They were not singing. If they did sing, it was like kind of a little half song because I guess the hormones aren't like flowing yet. They don't like really start singing until they get up to the US maybe. But yeah, no, it wouldn't. So I had to leave it as trails, unfortunately. But yeah, these were a couple birds that I kind of ran into. Summer tanager was actually a wintering bird I saw fairly often, but the rest were probable migrants. That was really cool to see kind of before everywhere else, I guess. But yeah, and the one thing I guess that I always think about is we always consider the US to be where these birds live, like their home, their native range, where they breed. But not always, I don't know when I started thinking about it, but I started thinking about the white-throated sparrow, which is a bird that breeds in Canada, but will come down here in September and won't leave until right about now in May. And so it spends 2/3 of the year down here, but we don't consider it like we consider it a winter resident, but it's more than that. It's almost, honestly, it's here longer than the birds that come back and breed. And so the same goes for these birds who they might have a long migration, but they get down there maybe November and they stay until March or April. So longer, they're there for longer than they are here. So it makes me wonder, like, where and I don't, they probably don't have an answer, but like, do they have true home? I don't know. It's philosophical, but it is kind of an interesting thing to think about. And I know there are a couple, sorry to academia you to death again, but a couple of hypotheses, for example, people think that these birds might have originated in the tropics and then at some point moved farther north to exploit the food resources up here and nested here and then began to start migrating down and back up again. And some people think it's just that they started here and then migrated down to escape the winter and stuff. So it's kind of cool to I don't know which one was it, and maybe it was different for different species. I don't know, because I don't like evolution, but that is one thing that is interesting to think about. And then I think oh yeah, for my last week I was kind of doing a little frantic scramble for all the places I said I was going to explore and then ended up not going to. So one of these was the resort marina and Lake Atun, where there are a lot of really cool water birds. So these are just a couple of species. Snail kites were really cool to see because for a while, I mean, in all my books, I see snail kites are super endangered because they're only in Florida, but it turns out when you go to Central America, they're localized, but where you do find them, they're pretty common. So they aren't in many places in Panama, but the canal is one place where you can see them pretty well. And I actually got to see them hunt a little bit, hunt snails, which is so weird to me because they literally just pick them off the surface. I don't even know how you see it, but it is a large snail. But yeah, it's cool. So snail kites, black-necked stilts, black-bellied whistling duck, which was cool to see up close for the first time. I think I'd only seen some vagrant really far off because they tend to wander. The purple gallinule, I think, was new for me as well. The purple gallinules are nasty. They're very mean to each other, as you can see. This is I don't know what the exact ages of those birds are. I think the one on the right is definitely an adult. That one on the left might be a younger adult, but yeah, they would fight almost constantly, and they would especially kind of beat up the younger birds. It was very sad to see, but also very entertaining. Actually, the whistling very nice. They look very nice, but they push each other around a lot too. So, well, never good to look by its cover, it seems. Right, and then last but not least is the toucans. So, toucans are super cool. Like you saw, I got out of the car and immediately saw one croaking its heart out. But the problem was toucans are, for some reason, I think a lot of the photos you see are birds at feeders or blinds. And that's kind of a common thing in Central America, seeing getting feeder setups and getting a blind out and getting the birds up close, which is really cool. It also kind of gives you a false perception of how approachable these birds really are. So I remember first day I walk up to a toucan and flies away. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Because you see all these like, I don't know. And it's really one thing I started when I started photography, I learned very quickly is that individual bird species are definitely very different in regards to, and you know it with regular birding too, in regards to how they regard humans and how much of a threat they think humans are. But then you have individual birds within species that might be different as well. But toucans in general did not like me at all. And they also like to stay really high up. So there was one day, it was the last week we were there, and only enough, I was doing my last project on monkeys, on howler monkeys. But what I did not know is that if you get too close to howler monkeys, they're very peaceful, but their one defense mechanism is they will poop on you. So I did not get actually pooped on, but they do it once. They don't throw it; they just will release it. And so so one like falls near me, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And then it all starts falling. And I literally booked it. I was like, "Oh my god, stop! Please stop, please!" Yeah. So it works. It works for sure. But yeah, so I was going, and I see this toucan, and toucans I saw pretty much every day, but I had not gotten a photo yet, and I was like, I need to get a photo before I leave. It would not have killed me if I didn't, but I really would like one. But for some reason, this guy didn't leave, so I kind of just snuck up. There was a little bit of foliage above me, but below him, so he didn't see me. I just peeked up, and he was still there, which was very nice of him. He has a fig in his beak. They mostly eat fruit, which kind of checks out. But one thing a lot of people don't know about them, and I think this kind of helps. They kind of is kind of helped by their very friendly looking faces and general, happy-go-lucky appearance, and the fact that they're very kind of popular and like I don't know, like I'm in the pop culture, I guess toucans look very happy, and but it turns out they're not so nice. They are actually nest robbers. If you didn't know, yeah. So tropical kingbird was a pretty common species on there, and kingbirds, excuse me, all right, will attack hawks and predatory birds very, very insistently and like not let up until they go. But they also do the same to toucans, which is really cool because toucans will eat eggs and young nestlings. So again, don't judge a book by its cover, but it's still really pretty and very wonderful. So yeah, and I think to end, I just have a little toucan dance. I think I have to play audio for this as well. This is what they do. They'll, like I said, they will kind of sing pretty incessantly throughout the day, but they kind of have a little dance they do along with it, which is really funny to watch. So let's see.
Get down.
So something was up with the toucans. I think they're getting ready to breed, so they might be a little more approachable as they are courting each other and stuff. But for some reason, I got a little bit closer to them than I did for the other 2 months I was there. But yeah, I think that's all I have today. Thank you. Informative. This is actually the first, putting this presentation together was the first real look I had to reflect on the time I had. Like I said, I'm a serial recorder. That's because I have a horrible memory, and I feel like if I don't know if this started before I took photos or after, but I'm also very sentimental. So I feel like if I don't take photos of things, I won't remember them. And that might just be an irrational fear, but it also helps me in that I am able to document really cool experiences pretty closely. And whenever I look back at them, I'm able to kind of instantly be transported to that moment. And I really value that. On the flip side, it means I have no phone storage ever. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. And I think you guys have
The mannequin with the golden neck,
yeah.
you said, you say he's doing a dance around the neck for 8 months?
Yeah. So they start. They kind of get ready in December and January, and then they just go. It's been recorded up until August. It kind of dies down throughout the months. So by April, they aren't doing it as much. But I think the idea is that females can breed at pretty much any point within those 8 months. One thing that was cool is the last week I was there, I was exploring another new area, and I was hearing the snaps and hearing the calls they make, but I was only seeing a bird that looked like a female. And I realized it was interacting with the male, but not in like the typical courtship way. The male was kind of interacting kind of aggressively with it. So I'm pretty sure it was a young male that was kind of learning to do his thing. And I don't know when they get their adult plumage. I think it will probably take at least a year because the juveniles look like females. But it seems like they're able to start learning how to do that pretty early on, if it was indeed a young male. But I don't know if that factors into it as well, because I don't know if people have just heard them do it. So maybe it's young males practicing for that time. But yeah, but it seems like they can go for a really long time, which is really incredible because, like, as you saw, like it takes them to the physiological limits of any vertebrate. So it's, yeah, it was really to
First of all, thank you so much, Kojo. I love your enthusiasm for all birds. I was gonna ask, you mentioned not this mannequin, because we call the video, but a different one that does the moonwalk.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Which one was that?
red captain.
Did more than one species of mannequin do that? Because that's the video I've seen on Geo.
Probably. I'm not sure if any related species do. I know the golden collar that there's a word species in the genus, and they all do pretty much the same thing. So it's possible that other related species do that moonwalk thing. I do know. Before I got there, I knew like mannequin down, like red cap was the species I pictured. So I think that might be one of the more famous ones. But I don't know. I'm not sure if they're the only species, but it's generally species or genus specific, like the type of monkey they do. It's really cool. They all kind of have really cool adaptations in their bones and things that allow them to make these. Yeah.